ladies and gentlemen, and only ladies and gentlemen it is and shall always be. I am an 18-year-old high school student and wanted to take this time to bring to your attention the current issue with biological men claiming they are women and in turn truly believing that they are entitled to use women's spaces. There was an incident within our district that occurred recently regarding a transgender woman who really is a biological man having an altercation with a young woman at MLK High School. It was infuriating when I had seen the video on social media, but what was detrimental to this is the fact that this man is and has been using the women's restroom and locker room. Firstly, the question we must address is why are we affirming the mental confusion of this boy and putting the safety of women in jeopardy by allowing mentally confused men to use the women's spaces? Of course, any male who claims he is a woman will accept it, but what about the women? What about the true girls like myself who are female down to our DNA? Why don't we ever get a say in whether or not we are comfortable with this? The truth is, we aren't. The majority of us aren't, and yet nothing has been done to protect the safety of these women. I will conclude with this. It all starts with you. You are in charge of the safety of us women and the kids of our parents. So please do something about it. Thank you.
Boy, I gotta say, that was a good speech in front of this California school board by this young lady here. That takes a lot of courage to stand by your convictions, especially in this woke cancel culture that we're going through. And all the accolades to her. I'm sure she has a very bright future ahead of her. Hopefully she becomes a senator, because we could desperately need some good representatives. What's going on, everybody? Wired here, and today I'm back with another issue, or another trans story, I guess. This time about a California high schooler who's blasting the district over trans students' use of the girls' bathroom. Excuse the background noise. Now, I just came across this story earlier this day. I wanted to comment on it. I did a story yesterday about a Starbucks employee in London, a trans person, who went off on a middle-aged woman for apparently using the wrong pronouns and then decided to attack a man who was recording them. And they were subsequently fired. I'm sure charges won't be pressed for the assault, but I mean, I guess it's something. But I think the pendulum is starting to shift the other way. I think people are getting sick of this trans ideology invading and infecting everything, and no offense to trans people. But I've always spoke out on feminism, which may sound very weird because I come from probably a libertarian or right-leaning perspective. But I do believe in what the suffragists fought for in the 1920s. You know, about women having equal rights, equal opportunities. And I believe in America we have achieved that for the most part. But in the past, a couple of years or so, we've seen the pendulum start to swing the other way. And now women are very unsafe in their own spaces, in their own bathrooms, locker rooms, sports teams. And I think this predominantly affects underage or younger women, at least, maybe the 18 to 22 category, those in college as well. But it seems like people are finally having enough of this, because as I'm about to show you in this clip, a trans student who was objectively a lot larger, bigger, taller, more muscular than the girls they're standing up against, has gotten into 2 fights and has actually been held accountable for their own actions, which is really rare in this day and age. But like I said, I got 2 stories in a row about this very thing. So, I mean, I would say we're on the right track, but I can't play the entire clip for you because YouTube obviously doesn't want me to show any violence, so I don't want to show any footage of the actual fight. But let me play the clip for you real quick, and you can get the gist of exactly what's happened here.
At around 5:30, not on the agenda, though, is the reason why there's an overflow crowd here. Parents from Martin Luther King High School want to know more about these fights that were started allegedly by a transgender student. There have been multiple fights. Take a look. 2 students arguing at Martin Luther King High School. It's unclear who started the fight, but the tall student is said to be trans. There's pushing and shoving, and eventually another student jumps in and fists fly. Parents and students say the tall student identifies as trans, and that gave the student access to the locker room and bathrooms designated for females.
Yeah, she is homeschooled.
This parent didn't want to be identified, but says she's pulled her daughter out of school for her safety.
The fights that are unacceptable, the things that she does encounter, other students have encountered, walking in the bathrooms, PE, just the acceptance is fine.
Fine, she says, but claims the school is doing too much to accommodate a couple of trans students. She's complained but got no satisfaction.
Everything was on the hush-hush.
Oh, they didn't want to talk to you?
They didn't want to talk to us about it.
Students say fights are an every week occurrence, but the last 2 fights involved this one trans student, adding fuel to the fire, rumors of the trans student's behavior.
And then he's also in the girls' locker room using girls' restrooms. He spit on my friends that are girls, females, and he shows his genitals in the locker room.
This is another mother who wanted to stay anonymous. She has a female sophomore student and believes the trans student presents as masculine, and that should be enough to keep them away from the teen girls. But she tries to understand the trans student's struggles.
They're obviously acting out because they obviously mentally or probably just have a lot of emotion. They have a lot of feeling going on, and they probably don't know how to handle what's going on and how they're being treated.
But the mom also says this is not an acceptable way to handle their feelings. Riverside Unified School District released a statement this afternoon that says that the trans student at the center of those fights, will no longer attend Martin Luther King High School. But I talked to a couple of parents. I'm not sure that that is enough to satisfy them. Reporting live in Riverside, Susan Hirosuna, Fox 11 News.
So, yeah, it seems like this trans student has been rightly kicked out of the school for starting fights with biological women who are uncomfortable with this person being in their spaces, which I 100% agree with. I do not believe we should capitulate to the minority and completely ignore the majority. And like I said, this never happens in the reverse way. You never hear about, women transitioning into men and men being uncomfortable with it, even though I'm sure it happens. But I think this is an issue that overall affects women a lot more than men. And it just never seems to be taken seriously. If, let's say, 90% of the women are uncomfortable with it, but there is one trans student in a school of, I don't know, let's say, 1,000 kids, that one trans student has free reign over locker rooms, bathrooms, sports teams. And exactly, where does it leave the women? Now, I got this story off of Mr. Greg Foreman. Black Conservative Perspective. If you don't know his channel, which I would hope you do, he is probably one of, if not the best news reporter, journalist, commentator of these social issues on YouTube. He's actually one of the people, probably the main person who actually inspired me to kind of branch out my own channel. And I think Greg is, I think he's a voice of reason. I think he always has amazing takes. I really have very few complaints about the guy. However, I found this story from his channel, and I wanted to critique it a little bit. Because he said something interesting, which I don't think is exactly wrong, but he said it's interesting that the students have no problem with showing their faces, but the parents are all blurred out, which is definitely true. If you just watch that, 100% true. However, I got to correct this a little bit just by saying, I think the reason for not showing your face, for the parents anyway, is these parents are supporting households. They're supporting families, children. And in this woke cancel culture that we're in, they can be identified on camera, no matter their opinion, and say, hey, listen, I don't think, biological men should be sharing spaces with, women in locker rooms. And they can be canceled for it. They can be fired. They can lose their livelihood. And this is in California, mind you. And I think kind of like they made fun of New Jersey in the late 90s, early 2000s for, kind of being the mess of the country, which might have been due to Sopranos and carried through by Boardwalk Empire. I don't know exactly. But I would say for me, California is that place. I would not want to go to California. You could not pay me enough to go to California, probably because after a couple of years, I wouldn't be able to live there anyway. It's super expensive. They're super woke. But I just want to speak out there for the parents. I don't think they're, cowards for not showing their faces. I don't think there's anything really to do with that. I'm glad they're speaking out. I'm glad people are finally starting to speak out about this issue. It's, it's been a long time coming. But there is a cancel culture around this. And if you speak out about it, you have the risk of being canceled. And for people who work regular, normal jobs, who have higher ups, always have to worry about stuff like that. But I'm glad the students especially are speaking out. I'm glad parents are speaking out. I'm glad the correct action was taken by this school district, at least finally, where they expelled this trans student for being the aggressor in these situations. However, I am going to kick it back to these situations just shouldn't happen. I don't know how I really feel about trans kids. Honestly, I feel like trans kids shouldn't happen. I feel like this is a thing being pushed on us by TikTok especially, which is why I don't let my daughter use TikTok at all. But I just think I don't really care that trans people want to be trans. If you're 18, you want to transition, you feel like that's going to help you live your truth. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you're an adult, you can make your own decisions. I'm totally open to it. I'm totally fine with it. I would never say anything bad about those people as long as they're not trying to indoctrinate other people into their belief system. But I think it should be kept out of schools for sure. And like I said, I applaud especially this young woman on the screen. Let me read her name out real quick. Megan Simpkins is 18 years old, for articulating her point so well in front of the school district and speaking up for what she thinks is right. I hope more young people do this, old people do this. I just don't think this should be acceptable anymore. I don't think there should be a protected class around this. This is the second story I've done in 2 days with a trans person being the aggressor, and they're supposed to only be like 0.4% of the population. Or maybe it's 0.04, I'm not sure exactly. You'll look up the numbers on that. Anyway, that's all I got. Leave a like on the video if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel, it really helps with the algorithm. I appreciate that you listen this long. Thank you. It really is important to try to get this information out there in any way I can. Because we got to fight it back against this. If you have kids, or if you ever plan on having kids, or you have brothers, sisters who are younger than you, anybody, it's just, we got to push back against this stuff. It's affecting way too much of our society now. I'm not saying there isn't a space for it. I'm just saying society should not have to capitulate to the minority. That's absolutely ridiculous. But that's all I got. I'll talk to you all in the next one. Later.